Welcome to the Triage Method Podcast with me, Gary McGowan, and my co-host, Mr. Patrick Farrell. How are you this week, Paddy?
I am positively fantastic.
Brilliant. So this week, our topic of discussion is going to be one that doesn't exactly kind of have a title. It's kind of related to training motivation, kind of related to the role of community in training and how having exercise and training as part of your identity is
Yeah,
probably
I'm
something.
probably going to title this like communal motivation or
Yeah.
something incredibly weak like that.
Communism, is it?
Basically,
Yeah.
communism.
A communist approach to fitness.
Democratic socialism in training. That's what I'm going to title.
Yeah, so like effectively, like the reason we wanted to discuss this was kind of twofold. Okay, so firstly, at the moment, with the whole COVID-19 lockdown, etc., everyone is basically relying on their own quote unquote. It only took us a few seconds to start saying that quote unquote motivation to basically get their training done, and they don't have any kind of community going. So people are training on their own. They're training in their bedrooms. They're training in their sitting rooms. They're training out the back with a couple of dumbbells. So they're probably not training with their preferred training equipment. It's been divorced from their typical training environment, divorced from their typical training schedule in terms of like when they go to the gym, before or after work, etc. And basically, all of the ritual aspects of training have been removed. And I think people are now beginning to see that, like, oh, it wasn't just my motivation that was carrying me through this. It was actually lots of other things that were making me enjoy the training process and show up to the gym every day. And I think a lot of people have been able to now empathize with some of the additional barriers to exercise and training that maybe they didn't realize were actually in their way. You know, especially if you were someone who trained with a training partner prior to this and now that training partner's gone, you may see your training quality start to deteriorate, even though you always thought that you trained hard because you trained hard, you know, full stop. And the second reason we want to discuss this is because I was on the Mumble Mentees podcast a few weeks ago with, what's his name? What's the guy that runs the podcast called?
Just couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I don't know. Lube, I think his name is. Yeah, but anyway, we're on the podcast there with the Muscle Mentors, in case you don't get the reference, with Mr. Luke Hoffman and Mr. James Sutton. And one of
James
the
is a
top,
good guy. That lube guy, I don't like him.
yeah, I don't like Lube. His trolling is actually incredibly weak as well. But other than that, you know, he's all right. But yeah, one of the things that came up on that podcast was kind of the role of not just community identity, and things like that in bodybuilding. And because like the thing that's interesting is that a lot of people kind of view bodybuilding and powerlifting and stuff like that as individual sports. And while they are individual in the sense that you compete as an individual and you are rated or scored as an individual, it's far more than just an individual sport. And you'll notice that if you go into any bodybuilding gym in the UK, and this is basically what we were talking about. So if you go into like a bodybuilding gym in the UK, there's quite a rich culture associated with that. You know, there's a rich physical culture, much like there would be in a lot of other areas. So for example, if you go to a CrossFit gym, a lot of people like wear the same stuff. Like they're wearing like Metcons, you know, they wear kind of the same clothing, maybe they eat the same foods and things like that. And it's the same when it comes to bodybuilding. If you go into a bodybuilding gym in the UK, you know, you'll generally find that they idolize people like Dorian Yates and Jordan Peters, because like they're the bodybuilders that have come from their country. And you'll generally notice them all, or a lot of people, engaging in similar practices. So people will wear the same t-shirts. You know, you see a lot of people wearing the Monster Factory t-shirts, those ugly bodybuilding shoes and bodybuilding pants that Luke and Callum wear. I trolled Luke about this to his face. So, you know, you're allowed to say this on our podcast. You know, those types of things that are associated with the culture, and that basically reinforce everything that is needed for you to get better at bodybuilding. So, I mean, when someone is going to the gym and they're wearing their Monster Factory t-shirt and they're listening to maybe particular music or whatever, and they're using similar language, like that's another thing that you see, similar language choices for how they describe their training and their nutrition, etc. Similar hashtags and stuff like that. All of that makes the individual feel like they're part of a particular culture and a particular community, which then reinforces their desire to train in a particular way in the gym. Like if you go into the gym, you'll even notice that a lot of people are doing the same exercises and the same set structure. Like one of the things you see now is that, you know, the vast majority or a lot of UK bodybuilders, they'll do a heavy set of 6 to 8 and they'll drop back and they'll do a set of 12 to 15 as their second set, and they'll do two working sets. And like I think the problem with the way that we've intellectualized, or as you say, the academization of the fitness industry, one of the problems with that is that we say that everything that is, like, we basically just start branding things as arbitrary. Okay, so we call things like that arbitrary, and that you could set things up in an infinite amount of ways. However, what that does is it divorces the training practice from the culture in which the training practice was built, and it's hard to do that and still keep the culture. Okay, so like basically what I'm making the case for is not necessarily just being the person that kind of scientifically analyzes everything and basically says that everything is arbitrary and you can do things anyway and none of it matters, because we want to keep that, but we also want to try and, you know, keep some elements of the culture to reinforce our motivation and our desire to train and our sense of community, etc. So that's kind of the opening framework for this discussion. Anything to add there, Paddy?
Yeah, like this is a weird kind of discussion because it becomes kind of polarizing, and I don't mean that like as in like, oh, it becomes negatively polarizing to people, or, you know, people are like, oh, they fall into these camps, but it makes it seem like some of the stuff even we've discussed before or other people have discussed, it seems like, oh, well, you said this was arbitrary, but now you're saying it's important. And like that, unfortunately, is the nature of the beast, because while we would all love to, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us would love to think that we are perfectly rational and logical beings. That's simply not the case. You can't divorce your practices from your culture and your identity. And like this, obviously this is a larger topic, and some of the stuff we're going to touch on here, you can start applying the thought framework to other areas in your life and other areas of, I don't know, what it means to be a human, like politics, you know, even like a religion, like all of those kind of things. You can see that it's like, okay, well, this is a self-reinforcing practice that, you know, makes the culture stronger, you know, but that also is a bi-directional path in that the culture makes the practice stronger, you know, like a good one right now is like Ramadan. People are fasting, like the Muslim community are fasting, and seeing your brothers and sisters in the same position as you, that gives you more strength to carry through with your fast. You know what I mean? Like if everyone around you was eating, you're just kind of like, oh, well, like, why am I doing this random practice? Again, it's not for me, right? And then they don't do it because it's like, oh, well, everyone else is not doing it, you know? Whereas if you're like, oh no, all my brothers and sisters are, like, all my community are in the same position as me, that's a practice then that gets strengthened by the culture. And it's no different than your nutrition practices, no different than your training practices. It is the culture that reinforces that practice. And this is very easy to understand in a very day-to-day manner in terms of, like, again, like you said, if you had a training partner, you know, you might think that you're this really motivated to train individual, but no doubt you've had days where you're like, oh, I'm kind of dragging my heels, I might not go to the gym, I'm not really, you know, I'm not in the mood. And your training partner is like, I'm gonna fucking destroy you on the bench press later, and, you know, I'm ready to go, and you're kind of like, oh well, I'm not gonna let this happen. And you build that motivation because of the community, which in this case is just a singular individual. And as a result, then you have better training sessions overall, and, you know, you push yourself harder and you actually get to the gym and all that kind of stuff. And while we all, especially males, like to think, oh, I'm a lone wolf, I can do this all on my own, I've got this, like, there is still that culture, there is still that ritual associated with the training process. And again, you can call it a physical culture, but it could also be a nutritional culture, if you know what I mean. Like I think that the physical culture is an embodiment of both of those things, because, you know, what use is it just, you know, training if you're not going to support that nutritionally and, you know, lifestyle wise. So I'm like, it encompasses everything, you know. And again, like, you can see this is why, like, you have like classrooms and stuff, because, you know, if you're gonna, try to develop that mental culture, if you want to call it that, where, you know, the education of individuals, you know, that works better in a community aspect where you're all kind of thinking along the same lines. You can discuss topics you don't understand and someone else picked it up easier, and you're like, oh, okay, now we can have this collaborative thought process, and because now there are many minds working on the same problem, we can get better together. And it is something that is not discussed as much as it should be, and it is one of these factors that are peripheral to training. Like it's kind of adjacent even to training, where when it's integrated, things work better, and that is underexplored, we'll say. You know, like for example, even if you read all these research studies on training, you know, you're like, oh, this person did 3 sets of 10 and this person did 5 sets of 10, and let's compare what happened. You know, like that isn't necessarily the same stuff that's happening in a gym, even if it's the exact same program, because you have to remember that there's individuals effectively coaching these people, and pushing them to push harder in the gym or whatever, again, depending on the protocol that they're examining, and whatever. Maybe they're like, don't push hard. That's the protocol, you know, but there's a culture associated with that. There is an entire paradigm around that relates to this kind of community cultural aspect, that they've effectively created for this study. And that obviously influences results, you know? So it's we'll call it an underexplored area, but it is something that is very crucial. And you see when it's implemented correctly, or even implemented at all, like I was going to say correctly because there's positives and negatives to this, because effectively what we're talking about is tribalism to an extent. And obviously that naturally has negative effects depending on what you're being tribalistic about, you know. But, you know, building that kind of community around this whole topic does influence your ability to motivate yourself, and your ability to then get effective training sessions, get effective, you know, nutritional practices, and all of that stuff. So this is a topic that, while it seems kind of adjacent or parallel or whatever you want to say to this whole health and fitness discussion, it is something that you have to really, really consider. You know, there's even an easier one to consider in the broader scheme of society, and that is, you know, the use of alcohol, right? Because you could easily make a very strong, I mean, a very, very strong argument that alcohol is the biggest killer of humans in the world, right? I can't remember the figure. I want to say it's 3 million, but it could be 30 million. So I could be off by a zero. Anyway, it is the number one killer of humans in the world. Like, kills more people than war, terrorism, car accidents, because again, car accidents probably occur more likely when you are inebriated. But anyway, like alcohol, like if we were again tried to legalize it today, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, no, like this liver psoriasis, all these peripheral topics, you're like, this is fucking awful for you, you know? But you can't dissociate the cultural aspects of that and realize that, you know, cultures have used this as a social lubricant, if you will, and to allow them to have a more cohesive culture. And this is especially true if you live in like a more rural environment where, you know, the pub is the hub of, you know, the community, where like, oh, everyone goes there at the end of a hard day's work, you know, and we all communicate and we have this cultural structure, you know. And even like, again, within the family unit, like having, you know, a few drinks out your back at this time in coronavirus lockdown time, you know, that's keeping your family more cohesive, you know. And you can argue that, oh, maybe like you just have food or something or whatever, but you know, it belittles the effect that alcohol has on, again, as a social lubricant, you know. So like, again, you can make a very strong argument that you should just get rid of it, but you have to remember that if you get rid of it, you degrade part of the culture, you know.
100%. I was going to say something there, and then I got kind of sidetracked because you said liver psoriasis, and I was like, well, that's interesting. It obviously meant cirrhosis, but then I was thinking about the alcohol thing, and then that got me sidetracked as well. But I was going to say something before that, and I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, basically that the idea here is to kind of somewhat look inward, because as you said, when people are listening to this, they're probably like, but you know, you guys say sometimes that things are just arbitrary, and yes, we absolutely do. And that's kind of the goal here, is to kind of look inward and to see like what are we actually missing by looking at things with this kind of solely like, you know, real scientific and real analytical lens. Because obviously when people ask questions and they ask specific questions, like they want to, like there's a specific answer that you can give to that question. And nothing kind of annoys me more than, you know, people just giving stupid answers on Instagram, being like, oh well, it depends, and then never actually saying what it depends on, or, you know, just not answering a question, saying that, oh, you know, it doesn't matter, you could do things one of many ways. Like that, they're just not helpful answers. So when we answer questions of the podcast, we try to be quite specific. You know, for example, if you were to ask, what are the merits of squatting, you know, probably going to give you an analysis of squatting that's based probably on, you know, anatomy, that's going to be based on exercise mechanics to some degree, and maybe talk about some of the variations between individuals. So like that, for me, in response to the way that question is framed, is the more helpful way of kind of working through that specific question, is to go through those things. However, like it does come back to the discussion of kind of culture again, because what you can say when you're talking about squatting, and you know, we've said this many a time, where is that, you know, there's nothing special about squatting. You know, there's nothing unique in that. It's not the best exercise to build your legs. It's not necessarily going to be best for everyone. However, it's very, very unlikely that we'll ever see the squat disappear, or not for a long time, you know, in its conventional form, the barbell squat. And the thing is, like, I still include barbell squatting of some variation in the vast majority of programs that I create for people. You know, the vast majority of people will be doing some sort of barbell squat variation. And it's not necessarily purely for like an optimal reason, because that's the thing. People seem to think that when we start to look at things scientifically, it's all about trying to find what is optimal. But it's also about about me asking, you know, what do I actually want my clients to be able to do? So if I have a client who's getting into weight training, is it useful that they learn to squat with a barbell? Yes, it is useful, because while a hack squat, you know, it might be a better option for them, is it likely that they'll always have a hack squat available to them? You know, is a hack squat a key part of this physical culture that they're trying to ingrain themselves in? Like, kind of not really, you know, in that the barbell squat is probably more central to what people think about when they think about weight training. And while we don't want to necessarily just reinforce the idea that you should just do things because that's how they've always been done, you know, that's useful. It's a fine heuristic a lot of the time. But we don't just want to reinforce that blindly. But what we do want to do is for our clients to have a basic repertoire of being able to perform exercises that are central to the activities that they're going to engage in, you know. So I mean, if someone told you that they were interested in improving their fitness, and they've got a running track out the back, like they could run backwards, that could be an option. And you could say that, oh, it's just arbitrary that, you know, we're deciding that you run forward because that's the way it's always been done. Why don't you run backwards? But obviously someone wants to get better at running forwards. And obviously that's a real stupid example, but it's actually still applicable here, because the barbell squat has always been done, or, well, it hasn't always been done. Like racks are a relatively new invention. The barbell is even a relatively new invention. But they've been done for a while, and it's a key part of that physical culture. And what happens then is you start to think about how this actually applies to, you know, someone's everyday conversation in the gym. So, you know, we kind of make a meme out of the idea, you know, how much do you bench, bro? But, and we say that, oh, you shouldn't care about that. But realistically, the vast majority of trainees in a gym, they care about that. Like they actually do care about how much do you bench, how much do you squat, how much do you deadlift. And even though those are arbitrary measures of strength, and they've come from sports or have been integrated in particular sports like powerlifting or strongman, etc., they still matter to people, because it's the kind of common language that weight trainees use. So if I'm someone who engages in resistance training and I go to the gym and, you know, I'm discussing resistance training with my comrades, then there's a common language that we use. There's a language of, all right, I can gauge quickly. I know quickly how long Paddy has been training, or maybe whether or not he knows what he's talking about. When I say, oh, you know, Paddy, what's your best squat? And like when he says it's over 200 kilos or whatever, I'm like, all right, you know, this is probably someone who maybe knows a thing or two about squatting. It doesn't give me the whole picture. It doesn't mean that that guy's a genius, but it's some sort of kind of transferable language that we can use to try to get an idea of things, as opposed to saying, you know, how much do you do on the leg extension? Like, while we can make the case that, you know, a leg extension might be a better quad exercise for many individuals and it's more specific, etc., it's never going to be the case that that is a key part of physical culture, unfortunately. Um, so you can't just divorce these things from each other. So while it is fun to kind of mock people for just saying that all they care about is their squat, bench, deadlift, or whatever, or all they care about is how much they bench, these things do matter. And while it's good to use the analytical and the scientific lens to dig into the specifics, it is important to zoom out and say, what might I be missing if I'm not appreciating where this actually fits in the kind of physical culture piece. And one of the most key examples of where this actually comes to play is something that we were discussing before we came on, and something that we discussed recently with Gavin Cusick, and that's kind of the topic of CrossFit, because CrossFit is probably like one of the prime modern examples of the role of community in engaging in some sort of physical training, how they reinforce each other, and how there's then a culture built into that, and you kind of see that manifest beyond just the exercises chosen. So when people think of CrossFit, they probably do think of, particular exercises, or they think of circuit training, or they think of the CrossFit Games or whatever. But another thing that was really strongly built into CrossFit was kind of like a paleo style of eating. Like I'm not sure if that's still the case. I think they do have some affiliations now with kind of low carb gurus and stuff like that. But the point there being that there's a dietary component built into the culture as well. And a lot of people, they show up to the gym, they're doing the same exercises. Your friends are kind of reinforcing the training that you do, the effort you put in, the choices you make. But also then when it ties in with your nutrition as well, you can see how this could lead to quite strong outcomes in terms of an individual's health. And yes, again, this is where it comes down to the kind of differentiation between like the benefits of culture and the scientific or analytical lens, because what you can turn around and say is that, no, you don't need to eat a paleo diet to be healthy or to lose weight or anything like that. And is there a risk there associated with trying to basically build one diet into the culture and having it too rigid? Of course there is, but the thing that's interesting is that, like, if you're trying to promote a paleo style of dieting, it is fairly helpful. It's like there's not much of a downside to trying to promote the idea of eating, what you might call real food, of eating in that manner. Like, yes, there's lots of benefits to that. Is there some sort of risk? Probably, in that you don't want people to solely believe that that's the only way, because that's when you start to see the exceptions, and that's when you need to be able to kind of step outside your culture a bit, I think. And that's basically for me where the limits lie, where, when something isn't working for someone, or when it's having adverse effects, or when you're kind of deliberately telling lies to try and reinforce your culture, that's where it starts to become a bit pathological for me. Because I'd be comfortable if I was in a gym environment or setting up a gym or whatever, in saying that, like, look, this, these foods are actually probably what you want to be eating most of the time, but you can still have some other stuff here and there, and this isn't the only way, but it's a good way. That's cool with me. But where it does become pathological is when, this is how we eat, this is the only way to do it, and if you deviate from this, you're going to be unhealthy and you're not really part of the tribe, and we'll look down on you. So that for me is kind of the limits of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, like you can't spell culture without cult. So it
Yeah,
obviously
boy.
has a very, very high propensity of, descending into that cult-like behavior, which again has positives and negatives. As I said, like, it's basically tribalism, and again,
Mm-hmm.
there are positives and negatives associated with that. Especially when you talk about in-group, out-group type things. And this is like, because obviously I want to just bring this back to rather than a theoretical, just like we're discussing culture. Like, let's put this into some actionable like ideas, especially now that we're in this kind of lockdown time, and we're going to be in this lockdown until August. So if you are trying to go to the gym now, obviously I'm talking about Ireland here. Like, I know there's a lot of listeners from other parts of the world that perhaps aren't even locked down, so they're listening to this going like, stop talking about the fucking lockdown, we don't have one. So there is that. But in Ireland, we're locked down until August. So like, I want to move this to like actually discussing this in a motivation lens, because that's what we want to discuss today. But anyway, look, you can't discuss, or you can't dissociate the culture from the practices, right? And there was something I wanted to say. What did you just say the last part there before I said
Uh,
cult?
CrossFit, paleo, rigid rules.
Paleo thing, right? So like you can see this in terms of how your practices are, we'll call them sustainable, right? Because you could use multiple examples. We'll say alcohol again because I used it earlier, right? So if you're the only one of your friends that drinks, then the likelihood of you drinking probably goes down, right? Because you're not doing it in a social setting. You're not texting your mates going like, "Oh, let's go over to Jimmy's house and have a few cans and play FIFA." Like, you're not doing it because Jimmy doesn't drink. The person you're texting doesn't drink, so it's less likely to happen unless you're going to drink on your own. And it's the same with like dietary practices. Like if you, I don't know, have a friend who is a vegan and they say, "Oh yeah, do you want to come over to my house for food?" And you're like, "Really just don't like vegan food, so no." Like that's a higher likelihood then that you don't engage with that community, right? But that also then forces, by virtue of them wanting to have friends, that vegan friend of yours to start associating more and more with other people that have the same cultural identity around food as they do. Like it effectively drives a wedge between that friendship, and that's just around food. And while that doesn't, like, food is something that we have to eat every single day, so that makes sense. And it's less likely to be the case with training. Like, you do see this in the training world as well. Like, people are like, "Oh, I don't associate with those CrossFit losers, or I don't associate with those other people, or whatever." Or again, like, you see this in like football teams. You support your football team. You're like, "Oh, those losers over there, those Manchester United supporters," or whatever. Like you push that group out. So again, we're effectively talking about tribalism. But how does this relate to your motivation to train right now? So you previously might have had this culture that supports your training endeavors, and what I mean by that is, even if you didn't fully engage with the individuals in your gym setting or wherever it was that you were training, like obviously the two of us, we've effectively lost both of our physical practices in terms of the gym and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So we've lost our sport and our physical expression practice, although Gary has a squat rack in his house, so that's pretty scum.
You have a bar as well.
I don't have a squat rack. I'm not scum like you. All right. Anyway, we effectively lost both of those physical practices in the culture surrounding them, right? As have many other individuals, and even if you do have a squat rack in your house, like Gary, scumbag, you've lost the physical culture around that. Because again, like, you think about it, like, you say you finish work, maybe you go to the gym. The general times people go to the gym are before work and after work. So we'll say that 6 a.m. till 8 a.m. time, and then that 6 p.m. until 11 p.m. time. That's generally the time people are going to the gym, right? Obviously, a lot of people listening to this are in the fitness industry, so they generally go to the gym in the in-between time, especially if you are in that kind of 20 to 30-year-old age bracket, and you're in this physical culture of like the actual fitness industry. You work there, you're probably training somewhere around the middle of the day, because you're probably working the other sides of the day, right? So when you go to the gym, you see the same heads all the time. You see the same people. You become friends with these people. And that, even if you're just asking for a spot from fucking Joe over there, Joe. Like, you might not know his fucking life story, but you're like, I know the way Joe likes to train. I know I give him a spot on the shoulder press on a Thursday when he's fucking really pushing it. He really likes that exercise. I know he always does it on the Thursday. When I'm in the gym, he knows he can rely on me to give him a spot. And when I'm doing my bench press, he's always there on my heavy sets. And even if you're not training together, you have this kind of mutual agreement, and like, give you the nod in the gym. If I ever need a spot, you're there. And again, like, there's all these individuals that you interact with that, while you may not text them regularly or phone them up or whatever, you do interact with those individuals, and they support your training endeavors, right? And you might have thought previously that this is not really a huge part of my physical expression or my cultural identity around training. But now that that's been taken away from you, you realize that, and I actually don't train as hard anymore, or I actually find it hard to even start training you know, like you're like, oh, I'm going to organize a time. I'm going to say 12 o'clock, you know, you're working from home maybe now and you're like, 12 o'clock, I'm going to go down to the back there and, you know, do a few exercises and, you know, train, you know, and whatever equipment that you have, maybe it's just your body weight, you're still like, oh, I'm going to go get some training done. But, you know, you're not in the same environment. You don't push yourself as hard. You know, you don't even want to go train. And you used to be the individual that was like, man, if I didn't train today, man, I would feel like shit, or, you know, I wouldn't be in the right mindset and all that kind of stuff, you know? And now all of a sudden you're like, who am I? Because you thought you were a person, you thought you were this, again, lone wolf that was like, oh, I'm really into my training and I really like pushing hard. And now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you haven't actually exercised in 2-3 weeks, you know, or longer. I know loads of people that were previously absolutely gunning it in the gym, and since the lockdown was initiated, you know, which is effectively 7 weeks ago, even though people keep saying it's 5 weeks, that's just incorrect. You know, that they've effectively lost their identity now, because they're like, well, what, like, who am I? I thought I was the training guy or whatever, and now all of a sudden they're not, you know, they're someone who used to train, you know. So because they lost their cultural identity around this whole training process, they lost their motivation, and they didn't even know that was something that was motivating them, you know, the whole cultural aspect around this. And now all of a sudden they're like, who am I? So like, I've seen this a lot in the fitness industry. You know, you've seen people completely go dark. They just don't post things anymore, which is fair enough. Like, I don't like social media myself, so I don't post much there. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite. I nearly said that word wrong. But, you know, you see people that used to post every single day. They used to be, you know, always on Instagram and, you know, putting up their training sets, their bench presses, their squats and everything. They were like, you're keeping really good progress tracking on, you know, some app like Instagram, or even YouTube or whatever. And all of a sudden they've just gone completely dark and they don't post anything anymore, you know? And a part of that is that they've lost their identity as someone who does that stuff, you know. And this is especially true for individuals with, we'll say, more rigid thoughts around the training process. Like, say if you're a power lifter, you know, training from home and doing some push-ups rather than, you know, your bench press, all of a sudden you're like, this is just not me, you know. This is not training to me, you know, because you have these very rigid rules around training. And it's quite funny because you see who has more versatile training methods or repertoire right now, because of this shutdown. And I don't even mean just like who can, you know, think of creative ways to train. I mean, like, who has, I'm going to say better, that's not necessarily the case, more versatile training ideas, because they can then just shift that and be like, right, well, I just want to get a training response, you know, and that's all I've ever wanted. So I'm just going to switch to this exercise or this training modality or whatever. And I think CrossFit individuals are doing extremely well right now, because they're like, yeah, this is just no different. I still just, like, yeah, they might struggle with the motivation side because they've lost their community, but on the training front, they're like, yeah, like, I just go in and I do a hard workout. I, you know, push myself on some maybe strength work, and then I do some more metabolic work, and then I do some like conditioning work. And it's all of a sudden they're like, boom, that was my template all the time. Like, I just substituted some exercises. Basically the whole thought process was just work hard, you know, and that's worked well for them previously and it's working well for them now, you know. Whereas someone who's like, I need to have very rigid progression schemes in place, very rigid exercise selections and all that kind of stuff, that's gone now. And they're like, well, okay, well, I'm just not going to train, you know. So that's not to say that those versatile training ideas are the most optimal. And this is obviously always a question here. And again, it's what we're saying can seem kind of hypocritical when we discuss it. You know, like, you might want a discussion of the most optimal exercises. You know, which exercises should you focus on when you have access to those exercises? But you have to also remember, it's like, you do want to build, like I was saying with the squat, some sort of versatility to your exercise repertoire. Like, I was actually discussing this with one of my clients yesterday about the bent over row, you know, and we're just going into some of the intricacies on that, because they were just asking about, like, oh, I feel this in my traps, you know, and they're like, is that okay, you know? And this is one of those things where, like, the bent over row is kind of a shit exercise for specifically developing any one part of the back, right? but it's a fucking really versatile exercise for developing the entire back. You know, like it may not be good for one particular point, which you might be trying to develop with some other exercise. You know, if you're saying, oh, I want to build my lats, like probably won't recommend the bent over row as my prime exercise if you're like, everything else is good and I just want to develop the lats. I mean, that's probably not the exercise I would choose, you know? But if you're like, look, I just want to get a bigger back, then a bent over row achieves that. Targets the lats, targets like all the erector muscles, targets all the fucking upper back, we'll call it, you know, the traps and stuff. Like it gets everything. It even gets the glutes. It even gets the hamstrings to an extent, you know? So it's a great, you know, big hitter. Same with the back squat, you know, where, you know, you might not be perfectly built to have the back squat result in big legs, but, you know, it works pretty much everything in the lower half and a lot in the upper half, again, the posterior side, at least, of the upper half, you know? So while it might not be the best specific exercise for a given muscle group, it is a good all over builder. And that may or may not be something that you want to do, you know? So having like a versatile ideology around training has been really good for individuals right now. But again, if you were, say, a bodybuilder and you want to develop specific muscle groups, you know, having a very specific exercise selection is probably a better idea when you actually have access to those. But you still need to keep that versatility, because there are going to be times when you don't have access to these exercises. And you can see that now with a lot of people who had those rigid thought processes around training. They've just kind of dropped off. They're like, yeah, no, like I just can't train now, you know?
Yeah, and I think like a fairly robust way of going about this, of trying to kind of remedy that, is to make sure that when you're getting really specific in terms of like what you do as a trainee, like, so for example, if you're like, right, I'm primarily interested in bodybuilding and hypertrophy training, it's far better to layer that specific type of training on the basis that, you know, like training itself is just part of who you are. And like that always sounds stupid when you say it, because it's like, oh, here we go, like, you know, you want me to change my identity and it's who I am, and, you know, I'm more than this, and blah blah blah. But like, it actually is a really robust thing that, like, if you try to build in the fact that, or the idea that training is literally like what I do, like, why would I not train? Physical training is just part of who I am. That's so robust at times like this, because what you begin to realize is that, like, yeah, okay, I was specializing, doing more hypertrophy specific work with these machines and these specific exercises and tempos, etc. But regardless of whether or not I have access to that, I'm still going to train, because training is a basic part of life, and that's it. You know, if you can build that, if you can make sure you're layering it on top of that base, that's going to be far more robust. Because what is quite fragile is the idea that, you know, you immediately specialize in one particular thing that's not robust across multiple different environments or without a gym, etc. Because like you said, you know, the people who are interested in CrossFit, or you could just say cross training, or, you know, in people who basically engage in multiple different types of exercise and build multiple components of fitness, they always have something they can work on. You can always do something, you know, whereas if you're focused solely on like powerlifting and that is it, of course, if that's your sport, please, by all means, fire away. But if you're just trying to getting into training, don't over specialize without having a general base, because if you do over specialize, then at times like this, what are you going to do, you know? And this was kind of reinforced recently by a book that, like, basically it's not even a book, it's a little pamphlet and a podcast that Jocko Willink, Dave Burke, and Sarah Armstrong, I believe her name is, they released this little book called The Code, and it's basically a little guideline on, you know, all right, how to live a good life, you know, because I think this is something that actually is that is kind of lost and that is forgotten, is that you have some sort of code by which you live. And, you know, we've spoken about this multiple different times, Paddy, where, like, you know, having some sort of things that, like, you basically just live by, that you see as being like, no, these attributes are valuable. Having those actually allows you to then get on the path, to use the terminology that Jocko uses, and get towards the person that you actually want to be. So basically they put together a little pamphlet being like, or little book, I'll call it a book. They put together this book being like, how can you become an eminently qualified human being? Like that's the idea taken from the military. And basically having all these different attributes, like your intellectual fitness, your physical fitness, your relationships, etc., and basically grading yourself on those. And it's a nice little reminder that, right, you're kind of supposed to be working on these things all of the time. And one of the things that I try to get this across to my clients in a similar manner is that, like, physical training, like your training, your fitness, like that's it's not something special. It's an absolute basic human requirement. Like it should be the exception that someone does not engage in some sort of training. Like that should be weird, whereas that's obviously not the case. Like the vast majority of people are not meeting even basic exercise guidelines for health, and that's before you even talk about excelling in any particular physical discipline. So what I would
Or
encourage
excelling in health.
or excelling in health. So what I would kind of encourage people to do is to try to remind yourself of that like before we get into specifics about optimal, about X versus Y, just train, like do some sort of training, because it is so fundamentally human, to just train, and it goes so far beyond just your hypertrophy or anything like that. And I know that, like, it is kind of hyperbole, but like we talk about it like often to say that, like, there's going to be situations where you actually need to be fit, and it could potentially be life or death. Like it could be, that is a very, very real possibility. And the only time that it's going to matter is when it actually happens. And that's the only time that you'll realize that it was in fact important. But there are far more, like, everyday occurrences where that begins to matter. Do you want to be the person who can't play with your kids because you're too unfit? And I know, like, if you're listening to this podcast, it's unlikely that that's going to be you. But what this might expose, the coronavirus, the lockdown, what it might expose is that you had actually never really built the idea of training into your identity, or saw the purpose of training, because all you were doing was kind of like just very specific exercises because it was related to your image. And without that particular type of training, now you're not even training for weeks on end. So that clearly shows that there was some element of fragility there. But to get back to the point, exercise and training, like, they're really, really basic. Like, I mean, carrying luggage for someone who can't carry their luggage, or helping an elderly lady bring her shopping to the car. All these little things that, like, yeah, you don't need that much fitness, but they do start to crop up. There are going to be times in your life where you actually do need to be a bit stronger. You do need to be a bit fitter. You do need to be a bit more physically prepared, or you're not going to be able to do things that could potentially help your kids, your wife, your husband, your parents, your grandparents, some people that actually matter to you. So by being fitter physically in any way, and preferably in every way, you actually become a more useful individual, and that could potentially even affect your career options. Like if you're hiring someone, and like one person has a higher level of physical fitness, and there's some sort of physical element involved in the job, obviously I'm going to hire you. And that might even be something that's quite subtle. It mightn't seem like it's a physical job. It could be working in Tesco in the kind of storage room, where one individual who's able to carry more boxes and not get tired by it and not complain about it, they're actually a far more useful person to have on staff. There's all these little types of things that come with fitness that are not advertised, and certainly not as attractive at face value. But if you can begin to realize it, like, it genuinely will change your approach to fitness, because you won't start to ask yourself, oh, I actually just won't bother training today. And it's not the case that you need to train every day, but it's the good framework to get into your head for a while, is to say to yourself, like, well, obviously I'm going to train. Like, that's just like brushing my teeth. That's just what you do. Like, you do some sort of exercise, and that could be the case that you just go for a real light jog one day. That's fine. You've still trained. And that's kind of why I brought up the topic of
walking. It's just like, all right, no, part of my
yeah,
identity is like my baseline humanness needs are doing 10,000 steps. It's just, I have to.
exactly. Yeah, that's it. Like, it is just about trying to build it into your identity, and recognizing that doesn't mean 100% workouts every single day. And that was one of the reasons I kind of brought up the code that Jocko et al. Were discussing, because basically, like, what the idea there being that you rate yourself day to day. That was this a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5 on the exercise scale. And I've actually got it here in front of me, so I can actually read it to you just to give you an idea. Basically, a 1 being engaged in basic fitness routine or activity. So like giving yourself a 1 out of 5, like that is that you just trained, you did something. So that could be the 10,000 steps, like Patty said. It could be going for a jog. It could be saying, you know what? I'm going to do 50 push-ups. Boom, done. It could be, I'm going to do 10 push-ups, depending on how fit you are. But the point is that doing something is better than nothing. But then to get a 5, like a 5 is participated in training that reached a level of exertion beyond my perceived limits, the most intense physical training that I was capable of performing, set a new baseline for maximum useful effort. And the point there being that like, that's going to be rare. Those 5s are going to be rare. And if you set the standard for yourself that 5 out of 5 is going to be the case every day, then it's very clear that like obviously you're going to train less frequently if you think that's the only option. So like you said, the 10,000 steps or any other type of basic activity, like at least get yourself a 1, get yourself a 2, get yourself a 3, get these things regularly, and then you'll get more of those kind of 5 out of 5 workouts that start to creep in, because you've built your baseline that no, I train, I do it all the time, that's what I do, because I'm human and that's what we do. So yeah, I think it's a useful way of thinking about things anyway.
100%. I agree with you, Gary.
Of course you do.
But yeah, like it can be hard to have that as your identity, so I'm not saying like, oh, this is just what you should do. You listen to this podcast and all of a sudden you just become this animal that's like, yeah, no, I fucking train every single day. I have military discipline and I wake up at 4 a.m. and I get shit done. That's obviously not realistic for everyone, right? But using this framework, actually, let's just go back, because we've discussed it before, and it's relevant now. I literally could not tell you off the top of my head what podcast number it is. But being a generalist versus being a specialist, like you can see right now, generalists are thriving, the specialists not so much, right? However, you can still be a specialist at certain times, and this is something that like I talk with my clients about this, I'd say fucking nearly weekly, right? And that is, you can have all of these different goals, but trying to accomplish them all at the same time, that's probably not. Do you mind not making a lot of noise there, Gary? Thanks. Trying to accomplish all of these goals at the same time, that's probably not the best use of your time. You effectively just get shit at a whole lot of things rather than good or achieve mastery at a few things and then start attacking other things, because it's so much easier to maintain a quality than it is to gain a quality, So like you could have been a specialist, powerlifting, that's what I was doing the entire time before this lockdown, and it's what I want to get back to, and that's perfectly fine, but right now you don't have access to that for a lot of people, right? So right now it's like, okay, I'm just going to build some other fitness qualities while I do the bare minimum to maintain the fitness qualities that I have already gained, So again, if you've been neglecting your cardiovascular health or your cardiovascular fitness, they're obviously intrinsically tied together, but maybe you haven't done cardio, you haven't done any fucking exercise set over 5 reps in the last 10 years, right now maybe it's like, okay, let's actually build some capacity so that I could actually do that in the future. Can I do a few fucking 20 rep sets of push-ups, and you might find that you're a fucking 500-pound bencher and all of a sudden you can't do 5 push-ups, so that's something that you can like bring in right now where you don't have access to your normal equipment or normal training paradigm, and you can again build a different fitness quality while still maintaining the other fitness quality. Like maybe you do lose some top end strength because obviously like strength is specific, but you've maintained the other fitness qualities such as muscle mass and tendon strength and all that kind of stuff, so that as soon as you go back in, it just comes back to you very, very quickly, But using the framework again of that like specialist versus generalist, it is really, it's a very good idea, or rather, you can see how beneficial that is when times like this roll around, when you don't have access to specialist equipment, so having that overarching framework of your training, and we've talked about this before as well, but having a framework where you kind of look at things in a more dissociated manner and you isolate things, you then improve on those specific qualities. What is the 5 I's that I usually say. Isolate,
Identify, isolate, integrate, improvise.
you're right. You're dead right, Kerry. But anyway, yeah, there's four, not five. Don't know why that just went straight out of my head. But like, you should do that right now, where it's like, okay, look, what are the things that I need to work on? You're like, okay, identify them. Okay, they're not specific to what I was working on. I isolate. That's kind of the specialization, and then you start integrating that into a larger paradigm of training as a whole. You're like, okay, cool. I'm going to work on something that may not be perfectly relevant to my other goals right now. For example, a lot of people, they came into this whole lockdown and their whole approach was, I want to build more muscle. That's what I was doing previous to this. I only just got into this health and fitness stuff, and I've been training for 2 years or whatever, but my goal is to be bigger, be more muscular, be stronger, whatever. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we don't have the optimal training environment to elicit those adaptations. That's not to say that you can't get bigger and stronger during this lockdown. Like, people are getting big and strong fucking years before gyms were invented. But like, oh, I don't have the perfect equipment. What are some peripheral goals that we can work on right now at this time that would support in the future that other goal? For example, you might be like, all right, well, I have been trying to gain muscle for the last 2 years, and I've accumulated some body fat that I wasn't really perfectly happy about having, and while it was helpful when I was really trying to push muscle gain, right now, why don't I use this time to reduce that body fat and, still train hard in a muscle gain specific manner to whatever extent that you can at home. But right now you're like, all right, I can't do these other exercises that I was doing. Can't really have the optimal approach that I did have. Maybe right now I'm going to focus on something else, such as fat loss, and having that ability to switch your focuses now, that's obviously a very easy way to think about it. Just, oh, am I gaining or am I losing? But you can also do this with different training approaches, again, depending on your overall situation and goals. You might be like, all right, cool, I was training. I had all these 10 different goals. I wanted to be super fit. I wanted to eventually run a marathon, but I also wanted to gain some strength. And you had been previously focusing on the strength side of things. And then you're like, all right, I don't have access to that. So I'm just going to really work on that marathon. I'm going to pick a marathon to do possibly after September. And you're like, that's what I'm going to focus on for this next while, and then come back to the muscle gain. And I'm going to do the bare minimum required to maintain the muscle mass that I have, so having an ability to have a broader perspective of training as a whole, and like Gary said, like, it's part of your identity where you just train, it doesn't have to be specific. Like, I always think about it, like, this is why people just drop off with training as they age. Because again, if you're a powerlifter, for example, and your whole idea around training is, I need to do like max effort stuff, I'm really pushing the envelope with, adding to my total. Like, what do you do when you're in that kind of 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, years of age? I mean, like, what are you going to do if that's your entire paradigm? Like, do you see yourself back squatting to max effort when you're 90? Probably not. So you're going to have to build a robust training paradigm that allows you to exercise throughout your lifetime. And I'm not saying that the elderly can't resistance train or can't push strength development. They certainly can. But what I mean is, like, what is the paradigm you're building? Like, I always look at, like, I used to box. I boxed for the guts of nearly 12 years, but that's probably not a long-term paradigm, right? However, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I can see myself doing that when I'm 90.
Yep.
Obviously I'd have to roll with some other 90-year-olds, not these young bucks. But that's something that, like, that's a skill development that you only get better with age. And while you might lose some of the physical capacity to do certain moves or do certain techniques or whatever, like, you build a different training set to still be able to train. I'm not saying you're going to be competitive or anything, but you're still able to train. So having that mindset where, like, yeah, you can definitely focus on short-term paradigms, such as like powerlifting. I'm not singling powerlifting out, even though, like, you probably could powerlift until you're fucking old to some extent, but, like, just for example, powerlifting, like, do you see yourself being able to do that, progress for years to come? And if you don't, what is your exit strategy? Like, when is enough going to be enough? And then how are you going to shift your training to other strength, fitness, whatever qualities you want to call them? Like, when is that going to happen? And are you willing to accept the trade-offs that have occurred for you focusing for 30, 40 years on 3 exercises. Like, are you okay with that? And if you are, again, like, that's, go for it. Like, I'm not telling you what your goals should be, you know. But if you're not willing to accept those trade-offs, then now is the perfect time to pivot and move towards other goals. Like, I always think of like a Jim Wendler when I think of this kind of stuff. Like, he's a 1,000-pound squatter, or at least previously he was a 1,000-pound squatter. I think it was equipped though. So if you're a raw squatter, you're like, oh, that doesn't count. But either way, he fucking walked out 1,000 pounds, or maybe it was monolith. I don't know. But anyway, 1,000 pound, sat down, stood back up. Fucking there you go. But he was like, you know, I can only do 3 things. I can only do fucking squat, bench, and deadlift. He's like, my body does, like, I'm shit at everything else. And he came from an athletic background. I put that in like finger quotes because everyone says athletic, and what they really mean is sports that involve running, because, you know, that's what people think of athletics, because that is athletics. Even though I would argue that there's definitely other sports that are far more athletic that involve no running, such as, you know, gymnastics. But anyway, he came from an athletic background and just, you know, missed doing conditioning stuff, being able to have a robust training ability. Like, you know, he wanted to be able to fucking overhead press. He wanted to be able to do chin-ups, dips, different things. And he's like, his body wasn't built for that because of how he had built it to get to being a 1,000-pound squatter, you know? So you have to change his training paradigm, you know? And you also see this when people get injured, like they blow out their fucking knees or something. It's like, all of a sudden they're like, I can't squat, so how can I still train? You know, most people just stop training, you know, and that's unfortunate. And again, you see this now, people have just stopped training, you know, and it is unfortunate. And the way you get around it is having a robust physical culture around your training. You know, you have it's training is the goal, you know. Again, all like this, even though it sounds like a circular argument, like all exercises and all stuff is arbitrary, you know. It literally is at the end of the day. So what you should just be looking for is, I just need to supply a stressor to my body. And yeah, there's going to be more beneficial or ideal stressors to elicit a certain adaptation, whether that's muscle gain, fitness, whatever. But you just want to be doing hard things to your body, you know? You just want to be pushing yourself to progress in some manner over time, you know? And that can look like so many different things, but it is the act of actually just training that we want to encourage, you know? So having that physical cultural identity around this, like that is something that you need to develop. Now, before we just let this episode just fucking descend into complete anarchy like it has, we need to bring this back to motivation and how you can actually apply this physical culture, this cultural identity around training to the situation we find ourselves in right now, you know? So effectively what we said is, you know, you can't ignore the cultural identity around training, right? It probably is a good idea to have a robust cultural identity around training, you know, or ideas around the physical expression, day-to-day life, you know. And so right now, if you're finding yourself in a situation, which I know a lot of people are, because we train a lot of people and they tell us it, and obviously you can see it on social media, people are struggling to have that motivation to train hard, you know, to train and try to progress. And again, you're going to need it if we're going to be effectively locked down until August, you know. If like you've just been, you know, waiting things out, thinking like, oh yeah, we'll be open soon, we'll be open in 2 weeks, I won't train for 2 weeks, I'll give my body a rest. Like, if you have actually been resting for the last 7 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever you want to classify it as, you know, you're probably in a position where like you can't see that happening, or you could see that happening for the rest of the summer and then you never getting back to training, you know. Like I can definitely see that happening for quite a few individuals who used to have quite a big cultural identity around training and the training process, right? So how do you use this information that, you know, there is a cultural aspect to training now that you're training at home, right? So that's the question I posed to you, Gary. How can you use your cultural identity, your cultural, you know, identity around physical expression and even nutrition to an extent to motivate yourself to train right now when motivation is probably quite low? And, you know, you didn't realize it before, but, you know, the act of the rituals, around going to training, the act of, or the rituals around that training process, talking to the fucking lads or the women in the gym or whatever, you were in that environment and that all supported your training endeavors. And now that's been taken away from you. That kind of social aspect is gone. That kind of community aspect is gone. So how do we build, first of all, that physical expression into our day-to-day life, but also use this cultural identity idea to increase our motivation to be able to train right now?
Yeah. So step one, I think, is to realize that training in and of itself, independent of the outcome in 3 months or 6 months or a year, whatever, training in and of itself is intrinsically valuable. Okay. So just the process of training in any form is going to improve your health and is going to improve your life long term, and improves your day. That's actually another important thing, is that like you always feel better after training. Like unless you injure yourself, you almost always feel better after you train. Okay, so that's the first thing, is to realize like that the process itself has intrinsic value, even if the workout is like, even if it's like a newbie personal trainer who knows nothing about training and he gives you, oh, here's a 30-minute workout plan. It could be the shittest program ever, but you'll still be better for it. Almost all the time you'll be better for it. So that's the first thing, is to realize that, right, physical training in and of itself, intrinsically valuable, intrinsically worthwhile for your life, for bettering yourself, and for just your general sense of well-being day to day. So it should be like baseline, recognize that like forget about optimal training is training and you should be training. Okay, that's kind of step one. Step two is actually probably more easily accessible these days than it will be in other times. So, and what I mean by that is the use of social media can actually be so useful during this time if you're deliberate with it. So what I mean by that is you could set up a little thing that you do every day. Well, like we did this a couple of years ago when we were dieting, and we got absolutely shredded, where we just post like our daily accountability, a photo every morning, maybe a little bit narcissistic, who cares, a little photo every morning, top off, abs out, from the start when we were actually quite fat, to the end when we had both lost, I think, somewhere between 10 and 15 kilos. We had lost a lot of weight. And basically from
Sure, I
start to
lost
finish.
20 kilos, but look.
Yeah. Basically, point there being that like what we did there was we basically created external social accountability, because dieting is a very individual process, but you can still build social accountability into that. So it was like, boom, daily accountability, body weight picture in the morning. And then there's a kind of reinforcement there that, one, you want to be improving for your own photos every time you post them, or the body weight or whatever, those things together, like that was part of it. But it's also the case that like that other people are watching, and like, yeah, you could say that could be potentially pathological in some cases if you're trying to make the scales reduce every single day and you're solely dependent on how you look in the morning. So not recommended for everyone. But in this case, what I'm saying is that you could actually use that to the benefit of your training, and that you could say, training done. Have you trained yet? At Paddy Farrell, at Brian O'Hengeza, at Luke the Muscle Mentor, at Mark O'Dwyer, whatever, your little circle, the people you talk to on social media. Like, the thing is, you could have 100 followers and do this, because that there's a few lads or a few girls that that they're always training. So you tag them and it's like, have you trained yet today? And they'll start tagging you back, and it's like, boom, you've got this little thing going where, if someone's not training, you're calling them out. You haven't trained today. What are you doing? Why did you not train today? So they're the types of things that you could start to create. You could have your own little thing. You just do it on your own. That's just like, boom, daily accountability training done. Lots of people do this. Like Jocko Willink, like we mentioned about the book, he posts his watch every morning, basically the time that he gets up. And although he probably would literally never admit it, there's definitely a desire to get up on time so that you can post a photo and not be soft as well. That's a thing. And lots of people do similar things. And I did that for a while before, I'd post my watch in the morning or post the time that I got up or whatever, because it reinforces the behavior that I'm trying to actually ingrain. So like, while social media can be like very often take away from your life, in that if you're spending 6 hours a day on social media, like you're definitely wasting your life. It can also like be really useful for reinforcing these habit loops, because you basically start to reinforce your own behavior, because you know that you have something to show up for, to check in. You know, it's the same like having a check in with a coach, or having a check in with Weight Watchers or whatever. You're creating that for yourself by having that daily thing that you post. But what you're also doing is you're bringing in other people. And if you're someone that, if you know that you're someone who really depends on other people and that kind of social element, then this is the perfect opportunity for you. So what I would say is, you know, get a few of your friends who normally go to the gym. They're probably struggling with the same things as you, and just start tagging them, you know, or say to them, hey, do you want to create a little social accountability group where we post in our workouts every day on WhatsApp? It doesn't have to be on Instagram or anything. It could just be a WhatsApp group where,
Or even
here,
if you're doing it on Instagram, you can still use that like close friends.
yeah, exactly. That's a good idea. Actually, you can actually, if you're not familiar, you can like select who your stories are seen by, and then you select only those friends so that they could see it. That's actually quite a nice thing, and I know a lot of GA clubs do that actually, where they the club will have a group chat, and basically if they're in the off season or whatever, and particularly now, you have to send in you doing some of your training, or you have to send in you preparing one of your meals, to show that like actually you're still on the path. You know, you're demonstrating that I care about this, even if you're not telling me that I need to do it, because you're engaging in that social accountability. So yeah, you can definitely set up something like that. And yeah, I think that's actually just quite a powerful way to go about it. I know people will just not do it, and I know a lot of people are like this, and I know I'm probably like this a bit myself, where it's like, I've got this, I'm a lone wolf, doesn't matter, don't need the help of anyone. But if you have noticed that at this point, 7 weeks away from the gym or whatever, if you've noticed that, look, it hasn't been going well for you so far, you haven't been getting your workouts in, just recognize that other people can be really useful. And if you create one of those WhatsApp groups, one of those story bits of banter going, or even a daily post on your own social media or whatever you want to do, it will help. Almost undoubtedly, I would be very surprised if that didn't help you to want to show up and do some training more every day. What do you think?
I 100% agree. Basically, you need to recapture that culture, and community is intrinsic to culture. You know, like you can say you have a culture, and if you're in a single lone individual, it's hardly a culture. You just have practices. You know, which, you know, there's merit to that. But you know, creating a culture, you know, it is almost, as I said earlier, like creating a cult. You know, so having that community, that's how you build a cult. You know, so how do you build a culture is having that community, and like you support yourselves, or you support each other even, and you support the goals of that community. You know, and again, your goals might be different. You know, you might be like, someone's focusing on fat loss, someone's focusing on muscle gain, someone's focusing on strength, someone's focusing on fitness, whatever it is, you can still have a community aspect to training. You know, you can still have a community aspect to physical expression. Again, especially because diet falls under this in our arbitrary definition, you know, where you're like sending in pictures of your meals, you know, and again, you're like, oh, I'm really trying out this, you know, lower calorie meal here, or oh, I'm really enjoying, you know, berries, they're in season, or whatever it is. You know, you're literally creating this community around the training process, around the actual motivation to train. Because there's going to be days where you're just going like, and I've been locked in this same house. You know, maybe you live in an apartment or something, and it's like 2 rooms. Like I've been literally in the same house. Yeah, I go out for a walk and that's fine, but like people don't even fucking look you in the eye anymore. You know, their heads down as soon as you look. Now, they always do that to me anyway, because I'm fucking a giant. But people always fucking like, you know, they don't even make eye contact, and that's pretty weird being a human like that. So you might be in a position where, you know, you don't really have a huge local support group. You know, you definitely have friends. You definitely have, you know, people that you engage with, even if it is a work banter group or whatever it is. You know, have that. Use that as accountability. Use social media. Use whatever resources you have to you right now. Like it could be literally an anonymous forum group online. You literally just make a fucking profile, and you know your name is some random name, like say Reddit or something. You know, you're just like, oh, I'm going to start engaging in that, and you know,
4chan.
4chan maybe if you're of that persuasion. Um, But you know what I mean? Like you literally, there's forums available to you, you know, so you could use them. And so like that's how you get over this hump in motivation. Now, obviously, like that's effectively what we do with our clients. Like I've been way more active with we'll call it WhatsApp support for my clients, you know, because first of all, they have a little bit more questions about certain things because obviously we've trained or changed our training style, you know, so they're like, oh, am I doing this exercise right? Not really sure of exactly what you wanted, but I'm trying to really foster that communication and keep that open because I know that is an intrinsic part of training. And, you know, well, a lot of that can be taken care of by the community itself. You know, like if they're going to a gym, you know, they have other individuals there that might be like, here, look, you're actually doing that exercise wrong. Like a random personal trainer in the fucking gym will be like, here, look, you know, this is how you do that. Or, you know, their friend might know that exercise or whatever. So some of that gets cleared up. But if you're training alone, you're training on your own and you're just unsure of something, you know, like having someone to ask questions to. And again, you can use our free Facebook group. Like that's definitely one option. We also have group coaching, so you could definitely use that. Or you could again avail of one-to-one coaching. But that is something that we're trying to foster with our community, you know. So you can still use that same thought process and that idea that there is this culture around training to enhance your ability to train and get results right now. You know, like, yeah, the gym is going to be open in August, hopefully. But what are you doing between now and then? Like, that's fucking months away. You know, you're just going to say like, oh, I'll just wait. You know, like you can still make phenomenal progress during this time towards your goals. Like, it's like when people say, oh, I'll start on Monday, or, you know, I'll start in January. That's when I'm going to start. You know, like a lot of people right now have a lot of time on their hands. You could use that to your advantage, or you could use that to your detriment. And I see a lot of people using it to their detriment. So that's my thought, my whole thought process on this.
Yeah. You know what I've been thinking about? The first day back at jiu-jitsu training, and you know who's been training. You know who's kind of kept it up.
Although I'm not looking forward to people who have not been training getting top position and using the 40 kilos that they've gained in this time off to their advantage.
Also not looking forward to all the purple, brown, and black belts who haven't trained in like 6 months and are literally coming in being like, fucking fresh meat, give me a white belt. It's going to be fun, especially when they've gained like 20 kilos and it's like, all right, first session, let's practice escapes from mount. Oh, fuck. Big old 120 kilo black belt. Love to see it. Anyway, that I think that's most of what we wanted to discuss in this podcast. Again, like a big I'm actually keep stuttering, man. What's wrong with me? Big purpose of this episode was basically to kind of get you guys to look at the questions that we're normally asked and the things that we normally talk about in a broader scope. Okay, because you know we're obviously very much fans of being analytical and being scientific and trying to reason your way through problems and being quite specific and trying to find out what's best and stuff. Like, obviously that's something that we're interested in and something that lots of people are interested in. But if that's all you focus on, it can definitely have some unexpected consequences. And I think at this time that's kind of being exposed. And it's funny because it is a lot of people probably didn't take their training as seriously or aren't as smart about their training. They're the ones that have actually kept training at this time. That's what I was going to say. They're the ones that are still like, for example, you'll see you know, mothers with kids and stuff who, you know, their sole workouts are like a couple of jogs here and there. You know, they go for some jogs on the road. They're still getting that done. You know, it's just regular, you know, ordinary people, everyday people, not your personal trainers, not like extravagant evidence-based folks or anything like that. All those people, they're still getting their workouts in. It's actually those of us who have sometimes become too specific, too analytical, too desiring optimal too much, too rigid. Exactly. We're the ones that are suffering by this. So like, I mean, yeah, it's there's hopefully some lessons in there. And other than that, nothing else to add. But if you'd like to join a community, here we go. The purpose of this podcast. First things first, you can join the Triage Method. join the Method community on Facebook. Now that we've had this discussion, I might even start doing a little post. Hey, who worked out today? One of those things. See what people want to say, because obviously, like, we want to create accountability for people, regardless of whether or not they're our clients, preferably our clients. And actually, you mentioned it there, but a lot of my own clients have been, especially the ones that are engaging in more running now, they basically send in their screenshot from their Garmin app or their Strava app, and they send that in every day. And that's actually been real helpful for them, and it's real helpful for me as well, obviously, from a perspective of analyzing that. But if you do join the Triage Method community, our free Facebook group, you can send in that stuff. Like, we've absolutely no problem if you want to be like, here's some videos from my workout today. What do you think, guys? Or just, I thought this was a class workout. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Like, absolutely would love those ideas. And if it helps your accountability as well, get stuck in, man. No problem. The Triage Method community, Facebook, free, open access. Search it, join it. Then join the newsletter, Triage Method newsletter. You can subscribe to that below. Goes out every Sunday. Includes recommended resources, especially if you're sitting around and you've nothing to read, you've no videos to watch, no podcasts to listen to. We provide suggestions there, as well as the content that we've kind of produced throughout the week. So, if you are taking time off social media, you don't want to be trying to follow links and stuff and looking for content there. A catch-all, all on the net there in the newsletter is basically anything that we've produced, so you can just keep up with us there. The group coaching is also a nice way to get some community going. So if you join the group coaching, basically you'll have your program, you'll have some guidelines for your nutrition and stuff. And then what you can start to do is use us for accountability there. So there's separate Facebook groups for the male and female group coaching. And what you can do is, post in your workouts, or, ask for changes to a particular workout because you can't do this particular exercise. Or, you could say, here's some meals that I cooked. What do you guys think? Or, I've been tracking my calories. Here's where I am. This is my progress over a number of weeks. I haven't really made progress. What changes should I make? So you can use that to your benefit there in terms of having that accountability, asking questions, having support, checking in with us. You can do all of that through the group coaching. And that's quite a cheap option. We appreciate that people are out of work and stuff at the moment. And some people aren't being reimbursed appropriately. So as a result, one-to-one coaching might be beyond your budget, but the group coaching is a real cheap way of getting that accountability and getting that support. If you do want to kind of, get on the path more to one coaching, we do have spaces available. Interestingly, people, like, now that we know that people aren't going to be back in the gym until August, I think things will probably pick up for online coaches again, potentially, because, like, one of the things I would be thinking for myself is that, if I know I'm not going to be in the gym until August or September, there's no more time for just kind of, messing around and just not training, or, like you said, just resting or whatever. It's like, oh no, this is for the foreseeable future. So let's get training. Let's set some goals. So if now you're setting some goals, you want guidance on them. One of the things that a lot of people are doing is taking up running and different types of training and stuff. So if you want guidance on that and you want to be, real solid in terms of getting the outcomes you want, one-to-one coaching is available. And other than that, social media stuff, guys, if you like to follow us, Triage Method on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and yeah, that's about everything I have to say.
Dead right, Gary. As per usual.
It's too easy.
It literally is too easy.